This is the lesson for Chapter 10, Section 6, titled Writing Scientific Notation, Day Number 1. So let's take a look at what we're doing here today, and we're taking a number that's in standard form and we're putting it into scientific notation. So what we're going to end up seeing is either a very big number, like this one here, or a very small number, that is between 0 and 1. And if it's a big number, we're going to end up moving the decimal point to the left until we can get the decimal point located to the right of the leading non-zero digits. The leading non-zero digit in this case is 8. And so 8.6 times 10 to the third is what this value is, because we have to move the decimal point 3 spaces to the left to be able to get that decimal point in front of the non-leading or the leading non-zero number. Over on this other example, though, we've got a very small number, and so we're moving the decimal point to the right until it gets to the leading non-zero number, which is the 2 in this case. So since I had to move it 3 spaces to the right, it's going to be a -3. Negative sign tells us it's a very small number. Positive means it's a large number. So in this case, we have to move the decimal point to the right 1, 2, 3 spaces. So it's going to go in between the 2 and the 1. You count those spaces, and it's 3. So it's going to be -3 because it's a very small number. In this case, the decimal point's at the end of the number, and it needs to be between the 5 and the 4. And so it's going to be 5 and 43 hundredths. So we write all the numbers until we get to all zeros at the end of the value. And then we stop writing the numbers. And so I count the spaces that I moved the decimal. And I moved the decimal 6 spaces, so that's why it's 10 to the 6th. On this next one, we've got the 3 and 21 hundredths we're going to write down first. So I need the decimal point to be between the 3 and the 2, and then I count the spaces. So I've got 8 spaces I have to move the decimal, 3, 3, and 2, and so I write that as 3 and 21 hundredths times 10 to the 8th power. Very small number here, so I rewrite the significant digits here, the 6.25, because that's where I want the decimal point to be, and then I count the spaces. So it's a little easier counting the ones that are larger because you see the commas. Here we got to be really careful and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So times by 10 to the -6th power. And on this next one, I've got to move the decimal point to the other side of the 4, to the right of the 4. So I can just write 4 times by 10, and then I count the spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. So a -5 there. This one, the decimal point goes between the 1 and the 0. So I have to write that 0 because there's a 7 after it. And so all the non-zero numbers I have to write, including any zeros in between non-zero numbers. Once I hit the row of zeros there, then I can stop writing the values and then just write down what the exponent should be, how many places I moved the decimal point, and that was 7 spaces. So the next type of problem that you're going to end up seeing on this assignment is ordering the numbers from least to greatest. So what we do first is we compare the exponents first. So I look at all these exponents and they're all the same. So then I need to compare the multipliers. So I'm looking at these numbers here. So the multiplier is 1.2. Now I'm going to add on an extra 0 because when I'm comparing these multipliers, I want to look at the place values, not the numbers. So sometimes people think this is 119, but really it's 1 and 19 hundredths, which is actually smaller than 1 and 2 tenths. And so these are the different multipliers I have. So I'm comparing the place values. I see this is the largest one. This is the largest because if you look at the place value, the 1's place, they're all the same, but I get to the 10th place and 2 is bigger than 1 and 1. So this is my largest number. Then I'm looking at the hundredths place to compare these two numbers. And so when I look at this, I see this one is the smallest one. It's the smallest because 2 is smaller than 9. So when I compare them, or when I write the value out, I'd write down the 1 and 12 hundredths times 10 to the 8th is the smallest one, that's the least, and then the 1 and 19 hundredths times 10 to the 8th, and then the 1 and 2 tenths times 10 to the 8th. So looking at this one, I have the same situation. All the exponents are the same. So when I compare them, I'm comparing the multipliers. I'm looking at the 6 and 8 tenths. I'm going to write 80 hundredths because I see 3 values for this other one. 6.09 and 6.78. So when I compare, I'm looking at the place value. And the 6's are all the same, so I have to go to the tenths place. And right here I can see that this one's the smallest because I'm looking at the 10th place, and I see 0 is smaller than 8 and 7. And so then I need to compare, continue to compare, so I see this is the next bigger one. So this is number 1, 2, and this is the third. This is the largest one because 8 is bigger than 7. So I'd write down 6 and 9/100ths times 10 to the negative 5th, and then the 6 and 78/100ths times 10 to the negative 5th, and the last one is 6 and 8/10ths times 10 to the negative 5th. So looking at this one, now I can compare the exponents. See, every time I always had the same exponent, but sometimes you can compare the exponents and they're different. So you can see how this is the smallest one because it has the smallest exponent. This one is the next one because it has the next larger exponent. This one has to be the largest because it has the largest. So even though these values, you see how they're all in scientific notation, doesn't matter what those multipliers are, you always look at the exponents first to find the smallest one. And this time I was able to do that, to compare them just by looking at those exponents. So there's my smallest one, 9 and 66/100ths times 10 to the 11th is number 2, and the largest one, 5 and 76/100ths times 10 to the 12th. So those are the types of problems you're going to see on tonight's assignment. Good luck.